Hello, grade 12 learners. It's another great week to learn new things in philosophy. We are now in week 3, lesson 3, the approaches in doing philosophy. But before we move further to our lesson, I would like to congratulate everyone who is keeping up in the submission of outputs, for doing your best, and also for being honest in doing your activities. I want to direct your attention to the image portrayed on the screen. So what can you perceive or understand from the picture? Yes, you may say that this image is all about the story of the blind man and the elephant. So if you know the story, we know that the blind men are asked to touch the elephant, but since these blind men were able to touch the different parts of the elephant, they have also these different perspectives or description of an elephant. So what perspective are they applying, okay, when they touch the elephant and make a description? We say that these blind men make only a partial definition or description of an elephant. But if we combine their descriptions together, we can describe what an elephant is as a whole. So this applies our lesson for today, which is the difference between holistic and reductionism. The next picture I'm showing you is about a football team. So a football team may consist of 11 great players, yet sometimes they make a bad competition. Why do you think so? Alright? I know you are also a member of a certain team, maybe a football team, or maybe a basketball team, or maybe volleyball team. So sometimes, why do you think a certain team lost a competition? Because each of the individual of this team has a different character, okay, different contributions to the team. And now let's define first the topic about holism. When we talked about holism, it comes from the Greek word and it means all, entire, or total. So it is the idea that all the properties of a given system cannot be determined or explained by its component parts alone. So instead, you looked at the system as a whole and determine the importance how each part, okay, behave. Now, considering the pros and cons of holism, so let's focus first about holism. Holism, when you do holism, you assess the multiple factors of the problem, okay, by looking at that issue or problem as a whole. You try to assess what are the factors that contribute to this problem, and then it represents also the mind, the body, the environmental analysis, and utilizes a big picture approach. While the negative of it, the negative effect of holism also, sometimes you overlooked the finer details of the problem because you focus on the general thing or the general idea. And sometimes multiple variables make this also a complex approach. And of course, that broad perspective makes a scientific testing difficult to understand. So sometimes in holism, the scientific approach is not really that applicable because we know in scientific approach, we come up to the solution to the problem by doing the step-by-step procedure, by looking at the finer details of the problem. So that's the pros and cons of holism. Now, dealing with reductionism. So reductionism is kind of opposite to holism because reductionism reduces complex phenomena to the interactions of these parts or their parts. So just like as you can see here, the whole thing signifies the different components or the different parts of it. Like the watch couldn't function without the different components of it. So a complex system is nothing but a sum of its parts. So reductionism, when you try to understand reductionism, how can you apply it in our current issue today, like the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic? So how would you understand this kind of issue? Okay, why do you think we come up with this problem? Okay, what are the causes? Okay, what are the details why we are undergoing this kind of pandemic? So understand first the components of the problem or the specific details of a certain problem. Now here I'm showing you the different two pictures, like the human body and the earth. Okay, so if we see the human body, we looked at it as a whole. This is the body of the person. This is how beautiful the body of the person is created by God. And also the earth. The earth in totality looks really beautiful and looks really peaceful and perfect. So that is the holistic view. Yet, if you are going to consider it, that whole human body signifies actually the different components, the different systems, the different parts of it that function together in order for that beautiful body to work really, really hard every day, or in order for that beautiful body to function smoothly. Like the earth. We see the earth as beautifully made, and we view it like it's beautiful and it's perfect. Yet, if we try to consider how it functions beautifully, we know that it's composed of the different subsystems, and these subsystems are interconnected with one another, and they work together for the planet to become a habitable place for all living organisms. Now, let's simplify the definitions of holism and reductionism. So when we say holism, it's a belief that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So you consider only the whole thing or the general idea. That could also signify the right function of your mind. And reductionism is a belief also that a whole can be understood completely if you understand its parts and the nature of their sum. Okay, so focusing on the details, focusing on the different functions of its parts, or maybe components or the elements of a certain thing. And could also signify the function of your left brain. Now in here, we have the different descriptions of reductionism and holism. Reductionism signifies your left brain, which you tend to become logical, sequential, rational, analytical, and objective of a certain problem. And you also try to look at the different parts or components of a certain issue or problem. While the right brain could also signify holism, in which, using the right brain, you are intuitive, you are imaginative, sometimes emotional, and you synthesize, and you tend to be subjective, and as a whole, you apply the holistic perspective. So let's compare and contrast reductionism and holism. Saying reductionism, we mean that all psychological can be reduced to simple parts, like the behavior of a certain person can always be understood when you try to consider the background of a certain person. And claims also that behavior is predictable as it is determined by a certain factor. And holism tends to look at the whole picture or the whole individual. Like when you try to understand a certain person, you don't consider why he or she behaves that way by looking at the background of that person. Maybe about the family background or why his or her behavior is like that. But we try to look at that person and understand his or her nature as a person. That's holism. And holism also is useful when studying individuals as a person, because we don't need to be biased and we don't need to be prejudiced of a certain background or cultural differences of people. So what are the strengths of reductionism and also holism? In reductionism, we allow the detailed look at components that affect a certain behavior. And next, explains certain types of behaviors. And the third one, scientific and open to testing. So while in holism, we'll look at everything that may impact on behavior and considers more than one cause only. And then for weakness, now what are the weaknesses of reductionism and holism? So in reductionism, it oversimplifies complex behaviors. So does not take into consideration other factors affecting the behavior. While holism is non-scientific, does not explain mental illness adequately, and overcomplicates behaviors which may have a simple explanation sometimes. Let's apply the two perspectives, okay, reductionism and holism. Let's say in your class, if you belong to a certain group, like in your class, in your family, or maybe in your group of friends, so you have to understand that your presence actually gives significance to the whole group. Like in your family, okay, you have your significance, you have your role, you have your function there that contributes to the whole function of the family. So without you, okay, your family wouldn't be okay. So you can always apply these aspects as you are a member of a certain family and a certain community, and even in social media, maybe you belong to a community there. So remember that you always have this contribution as an individual, because no one is similar to another person. So you have your unique contribution to the whole group. Now in holism, we look into the wholeness of the person, not just one piece of his or her being. So like it's like the total view of a person, why his behavior is like this. So it helps us to take away this what we call bias, or being prejudiced in something, because our focus is the wholeness of that individual, not the different part. Like if you consider, for example, in reductionism, you consider the background of a certain person, why the behavior is like this and like that. So after knowing the background of the person, we tend to conclude that, oh, that's why he is like this and like that. But in holism, in understanding a certain person, we try to look at it as a whole. The nature, for example, the behavior of that person is like this because that's the nature of man, that's the nature of being a woman, or so I'm leaving this question to you before we end our class. So which is a more helpful approach in addressing the different issues you are facing right now? So like if you're gonna think about the issue of facing the pandemic, the COVID-19, okay, what should you apply in order to understand the issue better? Is it reductionism or holism? Or maybe to some of your personal issues in life, okay, think of a problem that you have right now and think of which approach is better to apply with. So leaving you this quote of the day: sometimes you need to look at life in a different perspective. So thank you for watching our lesson for today, and I hope you learned something. And don't forget to submit your outputs this Friday and try to upload them in the created FB group page. So once again, this is your teacher in Introduction to Philosophy of the Human Person, Ma'am M. Magdadaro. So I hope you can also learn from this video, and don't forget to share, subscribe, and comment your name below so I would know that you've watched already this video. I'll see you all next week. Thank you and bye everyone.